Hey everybody, we are back with another week of cloud security. We have a really exciting interview for you today. We have Tyler Healy, who is the CISO of DigitalOcean. I'd love for Tyler to introduce himself, just tell us a little bit about you, about your background, how you got into security. And we'd also love to hear a little bit about, the CISO role and what you do in that capacity. Day to day, quarter to quarter, year to year.
Excellent. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Tyler. I have been at DigitalOcean now for 7 years. I actually got started in security about 20 years ago. So I did school for computer science and computer engineering, but then found that I really liked to break things in my spare time. And so this was kind of as security was becoming more formalized as a profession. And sort of in the mid 2000s towards the late 2000s, and so got the opportunity to explore a career in that space and did everything from some really arduous compliance audit side of security of making sure all the systems that we were looking at were configured correctly and secure. Spent some time in the gov space doing that, but things like leading pen test engagements all the way through. By the time I was before I joined DigitalOcean, I was actually in the consulting space, helping with companies that were merging together or acquiring other companies bring their security programs together. So, what is the strategy behind two businesses that are coming together and how you kind of merge a security strategy across those businesses? Actually, when I joined DigitalOcean, I joined as the director of security engineering. So I was, getting my feet wet in the business here, very technically focused. Even some of the scripts that I wrote managed to live on in the company today. So our initial cryptocurrency mining detector that we use to try and detect customers trying to just mine crypto on credits was something that I hacked together in Python. Always like to try and keep my hands into the technical details where possible. Gets a little harder, especially as stepping into more of the CISO role, which I did about 4 or 5 years ago. That comes with a level of responsibility and leadership, like you said, from a day-to-day standpoint. Cool thing about being in security is it changes all the time. I feel like that's one of my favorite parts about being in security is that the day-to-day is rarely the same. It's never a dull moment. There's always something interesting to sink your teeth into. That said, leading a large program like we have here at DO from a security standpoint comes with things like managing budgets and preparing for conversations with leadership, either within the company or at the board level, and being able to describe and manage the program overall. And so I think that big piece of my day-to-day is thinking about what we're out there to solve for our customers and for protecting us as a business, and how to craft our initiatives and our vision and our mission and the things that we can do for bringing up the talent within the team to go solve for that, and then kind of turning that into something where we're accomplishing our vision of being a secure hosting provider and secure cloud.
Sure. So it sounds super chill, just really relaxed,
Yeah, security is never tough. No, obviously.
So what is your top priority leading a security team? What's your North Star? What's the thing that you kind of always keep in the front of your mind, given that everything is always changing around you? Is there something that you just stay aligned with?
Yeah, I think it's super important to set a vision, for a security team, even if there's so many different things at any given time, right? There could be problems with the way customers are using our cloud to potentially do bad things. Other people on the internet, there's attackers looking at us and trying to break into our company. There are problems with things like having to even engage with law enforcement. There are so many different risks that you can take, and so every single one of those manifests in its own way over different periods of time. What I really go back to is something that we even set here at DO a number of years ago, which is kind of our mission statement and our vision, which is 4 simple pillars. The first is protecting the internet from DigitalOcean, which I know sounds like kind of like the reverse of what a security team might do, but as a public cloud provider, it's such a huge element of how we think about the day-to-day and the mission for us. The second is the more traditional, protecting DigitalOcean from the internet. We understand that we're a valuable resource and that our customers have value, and so as a major public-facing piece of infrastructure, we're very much in the crosshairs for various criminal groups or attackers looking to gain access. And so that is still a huge piece of how we think about the day-to-day, even making sure that our products are well secured from those who might be trying to do harm towards us or our customers. The third pillar is protecting DigitalOcean from DigitalOcean, because we are all humans, believe it or not. We haven't all turned into AI yet. And so we actually still make human mistakes as coders, as developers, as engineers, and as really everyone across the business, right? I mean, even if it's a finance person who's reviewing an invoice and they're going to be moving money from one account to another, how do you make sure that that's actually well intended and not a phishing attempt? And so I think that protecting DigitalOcean from DigitalOcean ends up being a really crucial piece of a healthy security program, which is kind of the human side of security. And then the fourth and final pillar, which is something we're making a lot of progress against recently, and I think is a huge opportunity still, is protecting our customers and giving them the ability to protect themselves. So as they are bringing their businesses to life or their projects to life on DigitalOcean as a platform, how are we enabling them to make really sane and safe decisions for what they're building and how they're building it, and giving them what I would consider like simple and straightforward choices around security, because as folks who are well steeped in the security space, we understand it very well and the decisions. But if you're just someone building a business or a developer or an engineer who isn't steeped in 10 to 15 years of security, a lot of this stuff can be overwhelming. And so what we're trying to think about is how to make the paradigm shift from security being a highly complex topic to something that is easily consumable and deployable on the DigitalOcean cloud. So that's kind of like the North Star vision that kind of hits across those four pillars. But when I think about all of the programs that we're designing, the initiatives that we do, when we go to even have like budget conversations about where money should go and what investments we should make, we try and root all of that back into the four pillars of that vision and mission statement.
Yeah, amazing. And it sounds like that kind of those four pillars seem like they really encompass kind of the extent of our threat landscape, right? So
yeah.
I like that the vision is sort of approached from who are the different actors that both could be
Yes.
threats, and then also the ones that are assets, the people that we want to take care of.
Exactly.
Yeah, very, very cool. So you kind of touched on something that we cover a lot in the class, and I think there's a lot of confusion about still across the entire landscape, not just academia, but in industry. And that's this idea of a shared responsibility model, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
We talk about it as like, here's the customer's responsibility, here's the cloud's responsibility, how that changes between SaaS and PaaS and IaaS. And, we get into like pretty granular detail in class about, what these different responsibilities are at different levels. But, one story that we don't get to tell in the class is the cloud responsibility part, right? Because we're pretty focused on us as product managers or future product managers, project managers, developers, all these things. What do we need to do? But I think the story of like the cloud security part is actually really interesting. So, just talking about what are those steps that that DO, for example, or the cloud takes to help customers protect themselves or to help protect customers from the rest of the internet.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, as you mentioned, you go from like the base layer of just pure infrastructure, which is like, oh, I've handed you a computer and I've hooked it up to the internet, but you are responsible for literally everything else. And that's kind of like where the whole thing starts. But then as you move further up stack, where you're actually deploying applications on top of it or doing orchestration on top of it, or connecting different components, like maybe it's a managed database that all of a sudden like the consumer just views that as kind of a black box of a database, and then everything else underneath the hood is something that you have to manage as a cloud provider. It's about having the right documentation and learning and other things. And I think that's one of the best things about DO, that even like when I joined, is just such a cool concept of how prolific the documentation is and the community is, because that goes a long way in a circumstance where we can't be side by side with every single customer. That goes a long way. And there's something that I think it was the Snowflake CISO said very recently that I liked a lot, and this concept of a shared destiny, with our customers. So it's not just a shared responsibility model, which kind of implies that like, oh, my responsibility is over here and your responsibility is over here. If we aren't empowering our customers to deploy safely and giving them the right education and the right tools to do so, and they do something wrong and it creates harm for them or harm for their customers or harm for the broader internet, we're still an accountable party in that. No matter if we've said, ooh, our shared responsibility model causes us to be hands off, we still, I think, very much have accountability in making sure that our customers are using our platform in a safe and sane way. And so I think that it's kind of interesting mindset shift of like, oh, we've just plugged in a machine and handed it over to you, to saying like, no, we're actually going to be part of your journey through this. And so, that's why I think getting the right security components into customers' hands, even as simple as things like two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication, on their cloud account is so huge, but so many people still don't do it. But like, it's just those reminders and the right materials and the right education and documentation at the right time for customers that can go a long way. And we even do things like inform customers that they're running insecure workloads on the platform. So even though it's not necessarily directly productized, if you will, it's not like we're running a vulnerability scanner and we're selling vulnerability scanning services to our customers, but we own the IP address that all of our customers run on. And so if you're like scanning the broader internet and you see this IP address has these ports open and it looks like, oh, somebody left a database open to the world or something along those lines, that IP address points back to us as DigitalOcean. And so we get a lot of insight from all these kinds of third parties that do research and scan across the internet about what our customers may have inadvertently left open. And so I think that we use that as an opportunity to provide a feedback loop. And we're going to keep improving on that too. I think that there's a lot of products that can help in that space that provide some sane and safe defaults for our customers to use.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's such an interesting part of where we sit, in the larger landscape, because I mean, sure, there's all the same kinds of scans that attackers might run to discover open ports, but we also are part of this amazing community that like helps each other. And so, we're able to tip folks off from the defensive perspective also.
Exactly. Yeah. And the way I think about it is if we don't do our job well, there's just so much harm that can come from our platform, either to our customers or from our platform. And so in that shared responsibility model, I think we feel a huge sense of accountability that it's our job to try and keep the broader internet safe. I mean, I know we just have like a corner of it from an IP space standpoint. It's a relatively large corner, but still, it's like, I think that it's important for the kind of the humanity of the internet for people who are responsible for their portions of it to take that responsibility really seriously. And for those who don't, I think that's when you see or hear terms like bulletproof hosting providers and that kind of stuff. We really we try to make sure that we are a good citizen of the broader net.
Yes. Absolutely. And something that you were talking about around documentation, I thought was, so important. It's almost like documentation as defense, which I think is so cool. Like,
yes.
The number of times I've been, kind of sorting through documentation on a different cloud or a different provider, and it's so dense, and you have to find the one page that has the one bit of thing that you need, and otherwise you're kind of screwed. I'm a big fan of our documentation from the practitioner sense, right? Let alone on the security team side. But as a user of DigitalOcean, our documentation helps me out a lot.
It rocks. Yeah, for sure.
Amazing. Yeah, but like, what are you excited about for that's upcoming, that's on the horizon, that's, whether in terms of investment and capabilities or emerging technologies, what gives you hope?
Oh man, yeah, so many things. The funny thing about security is it's always this balance between, like you just said, like hope and excitement, but also paired with the problem that you're trying to solve comes with a certain level of like anxiety and I don't want to call it fear because there's this idea in security called FUD, which is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Security programs of old used to use that all the time in trying to convince the business on what to go do and how to create a safe environment and protect the company, but it's just the wrong tactic. And so one of the things, and I think I just have to say, like in terms of the stuff that's coming up in the next few years, is a shared responsibility model around generative AI and other flavors of AI and agentic AI across the landscape. Because I don't think anybody has really figured it out yet in full, especially when you talk about things like guardrails against prompt injections and those, where it's like, okay, you have a model, and then you have someone who's a provider potentially hosting that model, and then you have a user who's building in that, and then you have somebody who might be wrapping that with more software, and it's like all along that chain, something can happen. Like, who's responsible for providing the guardrails, and how are those implemented? Because at the very end of that whole chain, you could probably apply some filtering capability, but in my mind, that's sort of like only half solving the problem. It's really about whether or not what you're interacting with, whether it be an agent or something along those lines, is actually doing the safeties itself rather than trying to just apply a safety at the outcome. And so I'm really excited to see and explore what's possible and how improvements will be made. And my guess is it's going to be slow and there are going to be problems. Because the way I view it is like there has to be an economic inertia first. Like there have to be use cases that are driving the deployment of these things. Like they have to be able to make money in some way, shape, or form, right? I mean, like all technology, if it doesn't land with the use case, it kind of fades away. And so once those use cases really start to land, I think we'll start to see the follow-on problems of like, oh, this is how they're actually exploitable. Because until there's like economic incentive behind it, there's actually usually not even a strong economic incentive to attack it. And so I think that usually that economic incentive builds first, and then you see kind of the development of various exploitable paths, and then the safeties come around based on what we're learning. And so I think that what I'm really excited to do is to stay really close to that problem space, because I think it's not about trying to build all of the security up front and safeties first. That's usually a very difficult thing to do before you actually even understand the use case with which it's going to be used for. But being really ready, I think that the teams that are going to do this best are going to be really ready to help design and build those things, just as the economic inertia is starting to take hold, rather than trying to like hang onto the wagon as it's flying away.
I think that before we can even get to the point of securing specifically agents, we need to make sure that we have agent observability, right? I mean,
yes, exactly.
And agent observability is in its infancy, and I mean, there's a long way to go. And in the meantime, there's a chatbot in absolutely everything. So
exactly. Yeah.
I'm curious what, as a CISO, as like a business unit leader, what you want, kind of new product managers, new emerging leaders to know about security, what they should think about when they're bringing their new innovations or their new products to market. What advice would you give them?
Good question. I think that for security, context is everything. So for a security engineer who is trying to help either architect a product or help be part of the design, context means so much, because ultimately security isn't a technical problem. In most circumstances, it's truly like a business problem. Like what happens if, what is the mesh of the customer expectation with the technical capability from a security standpoint? And so like, how's the product going to make money? How are users supposed to interact with it? What are the partners that we're thinking about engaging with whatever product might be developed? All of those things that seem like, oh, that's just a business problem, are all informative to how a security person will think through the right architecture and design, or the controls that might be embedded, but ultimately the hardest problems to solve within security are the ones that actually end up being highly exploitable as well. Is a mismatch between the business logic that we were expecting, or that a customer was expecting, and then we actually end up planning for it from a security standpoint. So that business context is so important. And so I think oversharing, even to the at least part of our PDLC process here, we have something called a PR FAQ, which is basically a mock press release and an FAQ, a customer FAQ. So it's kind of like even that, as early as that, where you're kind of doing a mock press release way before you might even start designing and building a product, getting security's eyes on it just to understand what it is you're thinking about and what your problem you're trying to solve, so you can start to bring in those concepts early, because solving for some of those much later on is tough. It's really expensive to bolt on security when something is already in the lab.
And to that end, do you see benefit in product managers spending like some of their precious time engaging in like threat modeling or being part of a threat model?
Yes, definitely. Actually, we just did a security leadership offsite last week for the leadership team at DO. And our product security lead has a card game that is threat modeling. And so we actually, like, our icebreaker at the offsite was we all broke up into groups and played like a threat modeling card game. And one of the things that we talked about with that was like, man, we should have this, we should actually play this game, like, rather than just doing it live all the time. Of like, all right, we have to do a security design review and a threat model for a product. It's like, kind of gamify it and bring in the product managers and engineering leaders to think through it, rather than it being like, okay, we're up against a deadline and they're very focused on just getting the delivery done. Shaping the mindset of how to do a threat model in a less deadline focused format is great. And so, yeah, that's a really cool idea.
Everyone keep an eye out for a threat modeling board game being published by DigitalOcean coming soon. I'd play it. That sounds awesome, honestly. We all wish we had time for CTFs, right? So we can do a version of it, right? Amazing. So I guess we have time maybe for just one more question. But I think something that my students would love to hear from you about specifically is what advice would you give to someone who's looking to get started specifically in cloud security? They have this interest, they've learned cloud, they are really fascinated by that threat landscape. What would you tell them?
Everybody has different ways of kind of like getting into security. Some people are really privacy focused. Some people are interested in just breaking things, so they might like join a red teaming type company. And there are folks who are really focused on products. So products in the security landscape are very cool. Continue to just like to build things and hone your technical skills and demonstrate the passion and the interest for the topic space. I think that there's no one way to get into security, but the people that I have worked with over the years that I have respected most and thought highest of, even at the like high leadership levels, have a technical capability that they've held on to, and just keep building and keep testing and trying and breaking things ethically, of course. is definitely a good way to do it, and just explore the new companies that are kind of coming out in the space. There's always somebody working on something new. From, we were just talking about the prompt injections side of things. Like, there's going to be a bunch of companies, I'm sure, that will start to pop up around guardrails and evaluating LLMs or generative AI for security posture, and like that's a brand new landscape. Like, I think that there's a lot to be learned, and there's a lot to be learned for looking what's coming in the landscape, and even stuff like security training. I mean, I know it sounds a little more basic, but like even that problem space will come a long way. There are so many ways that you can slice the security problem space. It doesn't have to just be like this only one path in, but definitely just keep on building and looking at what is kind of coming out and new and exciting in the security space.
Amazing. Yes. Keep building, keep trying things, keep practicing. Yes. Yeah. Break things wherever it's appropriate to break them.
Yeah, exactly. Build them up and tear them down and build them up again. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Tyler. This was amazing. I'm really grateful to have you as a small part of our class now.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Zara.
Thanks.